Hello everyone, my name is Adam Wright and I'm an exercise physiologist. I'm here today to apply for a job with Cycling Australia. So the exact position that I'm hoping to apply for is with the road cycling team, and that is with particular reference to the men's time trial Olympic team for the post-Rio Olympics period beginning on the 1st of October. I believe firmly that I can bring my expertise to the team in the area of environmental stressor training with particular reference to heat training and the benefits that can be obtained from undertaking such training successfully. I'll be using this presentation to firstly show you the ill effects that competing in hot or humid conditions can have on the physiology of the human anatomy. I will then present you with ways in which training and preparing in such conditions can be beneficial towards performance and overall health of particular athletes. I will then finish by proposing an intervention within a budget, and that will be put in place to attempt to obtain the optimal performance from the cycling team going forward. How does exercise in the heat affect the human anatomy? Taking part in strenuous exercise in hot and humid conditions can be a challenging experience for the human anatomy. A prominent cardiovascular physiologist named Lauren Rao stated that apart from a severe hemorrhage, the combination of exercise and hypothermia is one of the greatest stresses on the human cardiovascular system. The dangers and challenges only increase in highly motivated elite athletes who are more likely to push themselves in extreme hot conditions. Especially if, for example, they're competing at an elite level, like the cyclists that I'm hoping to assist if I obtain this role. If an athlete is unprepared for these conditions, these hot conditions, then inevitably their performance will decrease as the fatigue sets in. So what changes in the physiology of the body whilst it is under heat stress during exercise to cause this fatigue? There are several factors that contribute, and they are alterations in the athlete's energy metabolism, alterations in their cardiovascular function, and changes in their fluid balance. So firstly, energy metabolism. Now, the depletion of muscle glycogen and low blood sugar are well-known causes of fatigue when an individual partakes in prolonged exercise. Research by Hargraves in 2008 found that the rate of muscle glycogen depletion rapidly increased during exercise in the heat, as well as there also being an extra increase in lactate accumulation, which, as anyone that's an athlete would no doubt be very familiar with as lactic acid buildup. These increases are thought to be caused by the increased muscle temperature that occurs in the heat when exercising. There are ways to improve these factors that will be touched on later in the presentation. Next, cardiovascular function. At high exercise intensities in the heat stress and hypothermia can occur. Heat stress places a strain on the cardiovascular system and causes an accelerated decline in stroke volume, cardiac output, muscle blood flow, and oxygen delivery. All of this reduces the amount of oxygen getting to the working muscles and thus increases the feelings of fatigue and impairs the athlete's performance. All of this strain on the body can cause the body's core temperature to rise, which can be very harmful and can cause dizziness or fainting. It is important that exercise is stopped if a person or an athlete begins to feel dizzy or faint, as that can be quite dangerous. Lastly, fluid balance. One of the key ways that the human body deals with heat dissipation is through the process of evaporation of sweat. It is common knowledge that the higher the intensity of exercise and the hotter it is, the more you are likely to sweat, and thus the more fluids you are going to lose. If these fluids are not replaced, then dehydration will occur. Similar to the effects of heat stress, dehydration can reduce stroke volume, mean arterial pressure, cardiac output, and muscle blood flow. It essentially greatly hinders the ability of the athlete's body to tolerate and combat hypothermia or the body overheating. Okay, so now that we have established what the dangers of exercising and training in the heat are to the human anatomy and physiology, there can also be some benefits towards performance and health if training is done correctly. I'll now discuss these ways. The main three ways are through heat acclimatization training, the use of pre-cooling equipment, or through proper fluid ingestion. The main thing that all these three are trying to do is to lower the body core temperature before competition, and this will allow for better performance and less fatigue. So heat acclimatization training. Heat acclimatization training is a new method that many elite athletes in today's society use to gain a legal advantage in competition. Repeated training sessions in a hot environment can result in a number of physiological and metabolic adaptations over time, which will result in improved performance. Some of these adaptations are expanded plasma volume, increased stroke volume, increased cardiac output, and enhanced sweat rate. After an acclimatization period, muscle glycogen use is reduced during exercise in the heat, as the muscles aren't as hot and the body's core temperature is lower. So heat acclimatization training has been shown to be the most effective way to improve performance in hot conditions. In saying that though, research done in 2010 at the University of Oregon found that this form of training can also have positive effects on performance in cooler conditions. Their research involved well-trained cyclists and discovered that after 10 days of training in 38-degree heat for 90 minutes at 50% of their VO2 max, 90 minutes a day at 50% of their VO2 max, there was a 5% improvement in their VO2 max testing. This is an important finding, as the greater an individual's VO2 max, then essentially the fitter they are and the better that they will perform. The results also found an improvement in the participants' post-acclimatization time trial testing, with a 6% increase in cool weather testing and an 8% increase in hot weather testing. Pre-cooling. So whilst heat acclimatization is thought to be the most beneficial form of training for hot conditions, pre-cooling of an athlete's body directly prior to competition has also been shown to have benefits towards performance. So pre-cooling an athlete's body directly before a competition race can reduce their deep skin and body core temperature, which allows the body to increase its heat storage capacity. Which this then allows for a greater amount of work to be done before the athlete hits critical core temperature. And thus, that is when fatigue will set in, when they hit that critical temperature. In addition, pre-cooling strategies reduce the strain on the cardiovascular system and thus allows for a greater performance. There are many different methods of pre-cooling the body, and some are more practical than others in a competition environment. One method that is used but is not always practical is the technique of cool or cold water immersion in a tub or in a bath. This method is used to reduce the skin temperature, but can be time consuming and tricky as the water temperatures need to be precisely specific. This can be difficult to replicate if not in a laboratory environment. More commonly used methods are the use of cooling vests, ice towels, and consumption of an ice slurry mixture that is usually made up of electrolytes, like an electrolyte slushy. Ross 2012 found that the use of ice towels and ice slurries produced a 3% increase in a cyclist's power output in a time trial after the use of those products. Finally, the last one is proper fluid ingestion. The final strategy to improve performance in the heat is proper fluid ingestion. Athletes are encouraged to replace fluids in their system up to, but not exceeding, their sweating rate. This task can be difficult outside of a laboratory environment, as it is tough to tell exactly how much an athlete is sweating in an external environment. It is recommended that athletes develop individual drinking strategies and ingest fluids at their own pace, pre-event and during their competition race. It is believed that inclusion of a carbohydrate in the hydrating beverages will also aid in improving performance. Whilst fluid ingestion is paramount to performance in the heat, it is important to note that athletes need to be wary of overhydrating, as that can lead to dangerous conditions such as hyponatremia, which affects the sodium levels in the body and can be quite harmful. So finally, my budget recommendations. So now that I've explained the benefits and advantages of training in the heat, if done correctly, what does that mean for you at Cycling Australia if I was to obtain this job? I'm under the impression that I'd be in charge of 3 men's time trial cyclists, that they would be at the Olympic level, and that I'd have a budget of $12,000 for 1 year of training. Firstly, I would designate $9,000 to heat acclimatisation training camps, as they have been proven in the research, as I've stated, as being the most effective way of preparing for hot competitions. The best time to do these sort of camps is just before major competitions, so a few days to a week out from the comp. The research states that is the best time to do it, as the effects last for 10 to 28 days in the system. I would base the camps in North Australia, so in places like Darwin or in North Queensland, as they are predominantly the hottest places in Australia. North Queensland especially for the humidity as well, which just adds an even extra heat and moisture to it. The camps themselves would be 10-day camps, and they'd be 90 minutes a day, riding at 50% VO2 max, like in the study that I mentioned before, as that has been proven to have beneficial effects. It would be not strenuous riding, but just a continuous pace at 50%. There's been benefits shown for both hot condition racing and cold condition racing, so I would recommend doing this before every major competition if timing was available. I would additionally add in a pre-season camp of up to 30 days, and that would be 90 minutes of riding, again at 50% VO2 max. They will be riding every 3rd day. Next, I would designate $2,000 to the purchasing of pre-cooling equipment. That would cover things like cooling vests, ice towels, ice slurry mixtures, and some form of portable freezing equipment, which you would need for being on the road, and especially like for the rehydration of ice slurry mixtures throughout the race, which is also recommended. The aim of these pre-cooling things is to lower the core body temperature before the races, but they can be used also throughout the races if available. I would additionally buy baths or tubs for the water immersion techniques that I mentioned earlier, but they would be based for a home base of training, in the lab. It's not practical really to take that sort of equipment on the road with you, as they are usually quite large and not practical. Next, finally, I would designate $1,000 to the education of the cyclists on the correct rehydration techniques. That would be with particular emphasis on not overhydrating, as I mentioned before. Overhydrating can be quite dangerous, and you've got to be careful because that is the natural reaction of most athletes when they feel hot or flustered. What they want to do is have a drink, obviously. And as I mentioned before, it can lead to dangerous things like hyponatremia, which is having too much fluids in your system, and that can lead to sodium imbalance, which can be quite harmful and can even be fatal if not treated properly. So finally, I'll just recap the main points. So firstly, it can be dangerous to the human anatomy to train and compete in the heat, but at the same time it can be beneficial as well if done correctly. The benefits and advantages, so there can be benefits and advantages if done correctly. The most beneficial method is through heat acclimatisation training camps, but the other methods that I mentioned can be the pre-cooling equipment and the proper fluid ingestion, which is critical to performance. Thank you for the opportunity to apply for this job, and I hope to hear from you soon. Thank you.